Afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it's just about 5 p.m. here in Kyiv, and I wanted to show you this. This is in my neighborhood, and so I'm just about less than 1,000 meters from my apartment building. And a Shahed, we think a Shahed, slammed into this building last night. And while damage assessments are ongoing, there's probably at least 36 families that are now homeless from this attack. And it's uncommon that I'm in a position to get us like this. So I thought I would take this opportunity and hop on and see if anybody was around. It's killing me because some guy on Threads today called me a liar because it's killing me because some guy on Threads today called me a liar because I repost the overnight civilian apartment complex hit by a drone last night. At least 36 families homeless. Civilian apartment complex hit by a drone last night. At least 36 families homeless. You can see the workers up here in the buildings casually, or not casually, but unceremoniously, tossing the detritus of these people's lives, their shattered lives, tossing the detritus of these people's lives, their shattered lives, shattered by the Russian aggressor, out the window to land on the grass below for cleanup. It's another tragic example of an enemy who knows they cannot win on the battlefield, and so they target the civilian population. And this has been ongoing for 3.5, going on 4 years now. It's insanity. And one has to think. Exactly, Bernard. Day after day, the evidence piles up. One cannot defend. Think. Exactly, Bernard. Day after day, the evidence piles up. One cannot defend the Russian war machine when you see this kind of war crime happening every day. And what do you see this kind of war crime happening every day? And what are the Ukrainians going to do about it? What's the world going to do about it? The Ukrainians have been asking for help to close the skies to stop these atrocities. The 7-year-old boy in Dnipro last night was murdered in his bed by a Russian Shahed. If the West isn't going to help the Ukrainians close the skies, and if the enemy doesn't do anything but the Ukrainians close the skies, and if the enemy doesn't do anything but war crimes, what else can the Ukrainians do? 2 years ago, I had this argument with my buddy Bobby. Bobby was saying they should turn the lights out in Belgorod. They should turn the lights out in Moscow. They should make the Russians suffer the way that they're suffering. And I said, Bobby, hitting civilian infrastructure like that is a war crime. The Ukrainians are better than that. But it's 2.5 years later, and there's no water on in my apartment, right? Now, look, nobody should feel bad for me, right? I'm here by choice. I'm here by choice. But we should be deeply empathetic to the Ukrainians who didn't have a choice, right? They're here. They live here. They're the ones being invaded. They're the ones defending their sovereignty in the face of this genocidal campaign against civilian infrastructure and civilian life. 21st century life. Huh. You know, the lack of empathy is the first sign that a society is descending into barbarism. That's what of empathy is the first sign that a society is descending into barbarism. That's what a lack of empathy is. Barbarism. That's what this is. Barbarism. Comments like this from Jamie Boy. So fucking what? That's the death of empathy. And without empathy, we don't have a civilization. If you can't put yourself in somebody else's shoes, if you can't decry a lack of fairness in the world, then that's it. We're done. Hang it up. Because it's man against man. It's mano y mano. It's the libertarian, it's the reality, the tragic, final, logical conclusion to all libertarian thinking. That I don't have to give a shit about anybody or anything but me. And I agree, Lori, that is where the United States is, and it breaks my heart every fucking day. Every day. I'm in Kyiv. This is Kyiv, Ukraine, and what we're looking at behind us here, a missile and drone attack on the city. Now, well, Shah, because I only have the attention for Ukraine. Well, Shah, because I only have the attention for Ukraine. There are lots of people covering the genocide in Gaza. And if you ask me, do I stand with the people of Gaza? I do. I do. But why is it that we have to compare sufferings? Why would you do that? Yes, the situation there is fucking horrible. And the United States is not helping. But the situation here is horrible as well. And this is in the unoccupied territories. This is where the Russian army isn't in control of the population, where they aren't banning the Ukrainian language from being taught in schools, where they aren't burning books written in Ukrainian, where they aren't telling children that they're not actually Ukrainians. They aren't burning books written in Ukrainian, where they aren't telling children that they're not actually Ukrainians. They're actually Russians. And they should prepare to go to war against their Ukrainian brothers and sisters. But I'm glad you think that's fucking funny. That the United States is currently in a coup by a malign foreign agent in the person of Donald Trump and his group of gremlins and goblins who are absolutely destroying the federal government of the United States of America. Make no mistake. To the point where they have shut it down so that the only power that exists is Donald fucking Trump. So give me a break with your false equivalency and your snotty bullshit. Lack of empathy. Give me a break. Let me show you this place. Let me turn the camera around and let me get you a better sense of what's been done here. Now, here's one thing. The Ukrainians, boy, they are resilient. You can see workmen moving around like ants. They're swept in assessments, but it looks like at least 36 families are homeless after this callous strike against civilians here in Kyiv last night. Safe travels, GD. Look, I don't recommend that anybody comes here as a tourist. It's one thing with family here like GD. It's another thing if you're coming to volunteer. Anybody that comes to this country right now should come with a plan to be helpful to these people in this time of need. That is the reason to come here. And just over the weekend, I had the opportunity to meet in person for the first time some of the ladies from the Spirit of Ukraine Foundation who were in town delivering medical supplies to the guys on the front. So guys, we'll let that ambulance go by. We'll let that ambulance go by. The environment here is not particularly conducive to this live, but I wanted to take a minute and show everybody this. We are just 1,000 yards from my house, less than 1,000 yards. So this is right in my neighborhood. And it's evidence, I think, of the desperate nature of the Russian war machine. This is from last night, Chef Deb, yeah. You can hear I mean, that's been all day, right? Ambulances and first responders are still very busy in the city today. It was a big attack last night. It was 465 drones, 30 missiles, 32 missiles. Of them, 405 of the drones and 15 of the missiles. Hey, Refurb Man. It's tough. It's a tough one. Water is out for a large part of the city. Areas are without power. I understand in Borispil, which is a suburb here, there's no power, nor is there water. At least the lights on are at my house. And of course I have stocks of water. Of course I do. And this is why. You have to. Don't worry about it, Nightshade. I'm not going to be long. What's TKMA? I'm in Kyiv, Lev. Yep, I sure am. I'm just about 1,000 yards from my apartment. Oh, Tomahawks. I'm in Kyiv, Lev. Yep, I sure am. I'm just about 1,000 yards from my apartment. Oh, Tomahawks. Yeah, Tomahawks would be nice, but Tomahawks are the answer to this problem. Right. I mean, Tomahawks are a great long-range offensive weapon that the Ukrainians can use to target the bases from which these things are delivered. But they're not a solution to closing the skies here. The Ukrainians need a solution for closing the skies. Now, you think about this with me. For nearly 4 years of war, the Ukrainians have been asking the Europeans and NATO with help closing the skies. And they've gotten very little assistance. Air defense systems, yes. But beyond that, no. There's no no-fly zone in effect anywhere in Ukraine. And yet, when Polish airspace was invaded, when Danish airspace was invaded, what was the first thing the Ukrainians did? They went there and they educated the Poles and the Danes on drone defense. First thing. Isn't it time that a European or NATO-led coalition helped Ukraine close the skies over Ukraine so that Russia can't do what it's trying to do and bomb the Ukrainians back to the Stone Age, make life here untenable, destroy civilization in Ukraine, like they have in the Donbass, where their own people can't get water, right? In Donetsk City, there's no water. Now, Charles asks a great question, right? Look at Charles's question here. Charles is asking the question that we need to ask. Why Ukraine doesn't target the energy infrastructure of dirty Russia on top of refineries. Why? Because it's a war crime. That's why. Now, the problem is we're living in a world, and the Ukrainians are better than that, right? They know that if they start targeting Russian civilian infrastructure, they run the risk of alienating their patrons. And 2 years ago, when I had this argument with my buddy Bobby, I was fully on the side of the Ukrainians not committing war crimes, not targeting energy infrastructure in Russia. But it's 2.5 years later, and the enemy only does war crimes. That's all they do, because they know they can't defeat Ukraine on the battlefield. The evidence of that is clear from their failure to move forward this summer, from their failure to make any single strategic gain since Bakhmut 26 months ago. 26 months. They haven't captured a single strategic town. They haven't captured a single capital city. They are slicing off chunks of fucking farmland and claiming victory. Well, see you, Nightshade. Thanks for dropping by, pal. So last night, so look, they knocked the lights out in Belgorod the other night, right? And I think we're going to see more of that. Because if NATO and European partners cannot help the Ukrainians close the skies over Ukraine, then they've got to make the Russian people feel the pain. And the way to do that is, frankly, to hit energy infrastructure inside of Russia. Now, look, nobody wants to do it. I don't think the Ukrainians want to do it. They would prefer to win in a clean fight. But the other side is not fighting clean. The other side is fighting dirty. And the Ukrainians' allies have not given them the tools to win in a clean fight. Last night, so Chef Deb asked, didn't they just hit a thermal plant? They did. Last night, Deb, we saw 19 infrastructure targets across Ukraine targeted and hit. When I say infrastructure targets, I mean water pumping and treatment stations, electrical power substations, thermal power plants, etc. 19. They are doing everything they can to bomb the Ukrainians back to the Stone Age, just like they've done all along the Eastern Front. The Eastern Front is a wasteland where there are no hospitals, there are no schools. The Russians have bombed them out of existence. Where there are no power plants. 80% of Ukraine's thermal power plants have been destroyed at this juncture. And everything in the east is destroyed. So what are the Ukrainians supposed to fucking do? If their allies and Europe and NATO will not lead to close the skies here, they've got to bring the war home to Russia. They don't have a choice. Oh yeah, because it's Ukraine that's harming Russians. Get the fuck out of here. What are you talking about? Ukraine has no desires on Russia. Ukraine has never attacked Russia. Russia has illegally annexed portions of this country, and they are guilty of the attempted genocide of the Ukrainian people. And if you don't think that they are, you are not paying attention. Teaching Ukrainian in schools in the occupied territories is illegal. They burn books in Ukrainian in the occupied territories. They tell the children of the occupied territories that they are not Ukrainian, that they are Russian. They have stolen at least 20,000 children and repatriated them to Russia, where they are raising them as future Russian soldiers to come back and murder Ukrainians. Ukraine is not the aggressor. NATO is not the aggressor. That is a lie that the Russian dictator tells to justify his avarice, his insatiable need to expand his empire. Right, Charles. It's the delusional dreams of a Soviet Union. There's an old Russian lie right there. You should have thought of all this before nudging up to the borders you said you would not. This is nonsense. There never was an agreement that NATO wouldn't expand eastward. The very fact that every single former Soviet Union member and Warsaw Pact member ran running and screaming for protection to NATO as soon as they were out from under the yoke of Russian oppression should tell you all you need to know about the Russian war machine and the Russian criminal gangs. A gas station with nukes, cosplaying as a country. Well, Roy, on the subject of destroying the military-industrial complex inside of Russia, complex inside of Russia, I think we're on the verge of a new evolutionary stage of this war. Either the Americans are going to give the Ukrainians tomahawks, or the Ukrainians are going to build enough flamingos and other long-range weapons like the Neptune II long-range that they're going to be able to take all the telemetry, all of the grid maps, everything that they understand about every successful strike on every target inside Russia, and feed it into the computers for the long-range missiles. Now, right now, the largest Ukrainian long-range drone has a 250-kilo warhead. But that's a small percentage of the drones that they fire. The average is only 100 kilos. Well, the Flamingo's got a warhead of 1,050. It's 10 times the size, over a ton of TNT equivalent. And when that shit uses the telemetry and the learnings of the drone hits, Russian military-industrial complex doesn't stand a chance. Doesn't stand a chance. Russians are using mass soldier attack strategy, hard to protect against that. Except that the Ukrainians are, right? Mostly with a drone wall. 80% of Russian casualties on the front line now are not at the contact point and are caused by drones. Before they can even reach the positions, they're eliminated by drones. Before they can even reach the positions, they're eliminated by drones. There are single drone operators in Pechersk that have certified 1,000 kills. One drone operator taking out 1,000 Russians. And that number's only going to grow. So it's that asymmetric warfare that the Ukrainians are using to effectively hold the Russian mass at bay. Are the Finns planning on deploying to their border and start patrols? I heard that. The Finns are... So here's the thing, right? Putin made a big deal about deploying Russian troops to the Finnish border. So then the Finns took action to defend their border. They definitely moved some troops and some artillery to the border, right? Then at the Valdai conference, Putin denies, says he hasn't put troops there, but now this movement of Finnish artillery to the border is a provocation to put troops there. I mean, Roy, you can't even keep up with these fucking lies. It's absolute insanity. It's absolute insanity. And you can't keep up with the Russian lies. You can't do it. I mean, they just lie about everything. And you can't tell the lies from the truth sometimes. So again, look, if you're just joining us, I want to highlight Behind me here, what you see is the result of last night's missile and drone attack. This is an apartment complex about 1,000 yards from where I live. It was struck by a drone, we think a Shahed. Damage assessments are ongoing. The cleanup teams are already in there. You can see fresh plywood going up. Some of this plywood's gone up during the live. We're actually watching it in real time. And while damage assessments are ongoing, we think probably 36 to 40 families are now homeless from this. And you can see the cleanup crews unceremoniously tossing the detritus of these shattered lives, shattered by Russian aggression, out the window to fall down on the ground there for cleanup. So it's a tough scene. Hey, Val, you in Odessa? How's Odessa doing? I heard you guys got hit bad last night. Don't feel sorry for me, Moon Bear, right? I'm an American. I don't have to be here. There's 200 other countries I could be in. I am here by choice. So do not feel bad for me. Feel empathy, compassion for the Ukrainians, the people who live here, who had no choice in this. Who had no choice in this. They were forced into this war by an aggressor nation that poured 250,000 troops over their border after illegally annexing Crimea and starting the Donbass War. So it's 11 years now that the Ukrainian people have been suffering under the yoke of Russian oppression and tyranny in the temporarily occupied territories. It is 4 years since almost 4 years since the full-scale invasion, and all the people of Ukraine have been suffering under the yoke of Russian aggression. I agree, they should not be dealing with this at all. And if the rest of the civilized world had done its job, they wouldn't be. But we didn't. And look, I mean, generally, I despise Donald Trump and his maggots. But I don't have a lot of confidence in the Democrats either. Remember, Crimea was taken on Clinton and Obama's watch. They're the ones that failed in their duty to our ally, failed to uphold Bill Clinton's promises in the '94 Budapest Memoranda. So it's a long, complicated history here. And I don't want to lambaste the West and our complicated history here. And I don't want to lambaste the West and our liberal democracies too much. Because the real onus for this nightmare insanity, this genocide against a free people, rests solely on the head of Vladimir Putin and his gremlins in the Kremlin. These warmongering motherfuckers who have taken 20% of Moldova, 20% of Georgia, 20% of Ukraine, and all of Chechnya will never stop. The great lie, the greatest lie that Vladimir Putin has been able to convince people in the West of is that he can be satisfied. He can be appeased. He cannot be. His kind of death cult, his gangster methodologies never will be satisfied. Oh, now here's a common Russian lie. The coup of Maidan was orchestrated in Washington. The thing about these authoritarians is that they don't believe in grassroots movements. They don't believe that the people have a will that they can summon and enforce in the world. They don't believe that. They believe that the people are peasants to be harvested like cattle and largely ignored, be given as little as possible, to be bought and sold by their betters. This lie has left the Russian people, a people who are producing 11 million barrels of oil a day, with a standard of living that's lower than that in Mexico. And a billionaire oligarch class that steals everything that it possibly can for itself and leaves 20% of the population without a toilet, without an indoor. 1 in 5 Russians are taking a shit out back because they don't have a toilet in their house. That's the effect of kleptocracy on a society. It bankrupts it. So, Jean, the Maidan Revolution of 2014 was probably the single motivating or inciting incident that led to Putin's illegal annexation of Crimea and invasion of Crimea. And it's because up until that time, he had, and if you're just joining us, this is the result of a Shahed last night that hit what is clearly a civilian apartment complex and has left about 40 families homeless as of right now. That number may go up. So what happened in 2014 was you had a Russian-installed Putin puppet in the government. And he turned course. He betrayed his election campaign promises to the people of Ukraine to get them into NATO and the EU, right? To turn the country to the West. And when he betrayed the people of Ukraine, they took to the streets. And so you had 100,000 people in the streets of Kyiv in what has become known as the Maidan Revolution. Or a color revolution. So I think this one, I forget what color they ascribed to the Maidan Revolution. I'd have to look that up. But the point is, that guy, that president at the time, had to flee to Russia with as many billions as he could pilfer from the state here, just like Bashir al-Assad did. So 2014, the Maidan was a popular cultural revolution that limited, Orange, thank you, Chef Deb, that limited Russia's control over the vassal state Ukraine and led to a more truly democratic and free Ukraine. Good morning, Canada. How you doing? The Orange Revolution. Thanks, Chef Deb. Yeah. So, guys, again, what you're looking at here is one of 60 Shaheds that got through and hit targets in Ukraine last night. This apartment complex is just also known as the Revolution of Dignity. Thank you, Lev. I knew that. Something was... Good call. Thank you. So again, this is one of the 60 Shaheds that got through and hit targets in Ukraine. This is clearly a civilian apartment complex, and about 40 families are now homeless, having had their lives shattered callously and cruelly by a Russian Shahed last night. Hey, no. It's a good question, Jean, or Jean. We forget, and not everybody knows that history. The ambulances are just not stopping today. There's dozens of people that were injured last night. Ukraine is a dictatorship. That's funny, because the guy in charge here, he's got 72% support from the people. What is a headshot? Yeah, there's no military targets here, just war crimes. Thanks, Van. How you doing, pal? No, there were no military targets last night. Last night was all infrastructure targets. it was water treatment, water pumping stations. So the water's still out of my place, but the lights are back on. Energy infrastructure, substations, thermal power plants for heating, so that they can they can bomb this place back to the Stone Age. Sorry, I'm confused by this thread down here. What's going on? It's all war crimes. What is a Shahed? Not a Shahed, a Shahed. The Shahed drone. It's an unmanned aerial vehicle that carries about 95 kilograms of TNT equivalent. And the Russians send them 95 kilograms of TNT equivalent. And the Russians send them every night. No, it's not pronounced Shahed. So there's a common mistake. There are two words in Arabic. Shahed, which means witness, and it comes from the daily evening prayer that all devout Muslims say. And then Shahed, which is martyr, and the drone is called the witness. The Shahed is the correct pronunciation. It's the difference between desert and desert in English. Desert and desert in English. But Lev sums it up. It's an Iranian drone. Lev, I think that they were on about my pronunciation. See you later, Anthony. You got it, Cleve. It's astonishing to me how many commentators on this war can't get that name right. I mean, in my mind, it's like a basic thing you have to get right. Like Kyiv instead of Kiev, right? Kiev is the Russian pronunciation, the Russian name, the colonizer's name for this city. For the Ukrainians, the city is Kyiv. Well, it's not actually Kyiv. I can't quite get that last vowel right. But it's Kyiv, not Kiev. Thanks, Bernard. I'll see you tonight. You're right, Richard. And that's a good point to make. The drone that hit this building behind me, as you can see here, was probably not actually an Iranian Shahed, but it was in all likelihood a Russian knockoff. The Russians are producing them under a license agreement with the Iranians. And under the Russian name, they are called the Garons, or Garans. Yeah, they're both Shahed and Shahed. Kyiv and Kiev are spelled differently. They're different words. And you know, Moon Bear, that's a good point to make. I want to thank everybody that's in this live right now. There's over 200 people here. And it's easy, if you live in the West, to not pay attention to what's going on here. To like that other guy who said, who gives a fuck? Right? To be indifferent to the suffering of your fellow human beings. But I'll tell you, the greatest threat to democracy in the world right now is Putin in Ukraine. But I'll tell you, the greatest threat to democracy in the world right now is Putin in Ukraine. It really is. Banana. And paying attention to what's going on here. Making those calls to your senators, paying attention to what's going on here. Making those calls to your senators, your representatives, etc., when it is easy to turn away, speaks very well of all of you. No, I agree, Chris. The whole of the West Oh, Trump's a tool of the Kremlin. Look, I can't prove it, but everything that Trump does is just oxygen to the Kremlin. So, look, and you can say, but wait, he's sending tomahawks. He's talking tough on Russia. Yeah, but he still hasn't done a fucking thing except shut down the government, which means, are weapons deliveries being made right now? I can't confirm that they're not, but I'll bet you that they're being slow fucking walked like they haven't been since Hegseth. Can't confirm that they're not, but I'll bet you that they're being slow fucking walked like they haven't been since Hegseth's order in February. If they're being delivered at all. So right now, while he's got the federal government shut down, he can talk tough. He can say whatever he at all. So right now, while he's got the federal government shut down, he can talk tough. He can say whatever he wants. And it doesn't change the fact that while he's stabbing Ukraine in the back. So don't fucking talk to me about Donald Trump. He is no friend to Ukraine. He is no friend to American democracy. He is no friend to truth and justice in the world. He is a petty, wannabe, failed businessman dictator who wants to be the next Vladimir Putin of North America. He wants to invade American cities and start a civil war. It's obscene and insane. Right, Van? He is a grifter. I'm doing just fine, Breakthrough. He is a grifter. I'm doing just fine, Breakthrough. My neighbors are not. This apartment building in my neighborhood here got hit last night. One of the 60 Shaheds that came in made about 40 Ukrainian families homeless last night in this strike alone. Well, thanks, Jasmine. I didn't get much sleep last night. It was pretty loud here. Thanks, Dragon. All right, guys, I tell you what, I got to call it a day. It's about to start raining, and I got to get home before it does. Thanks for dropping in, everybody. I sure do appreciate it. Make it a great day. Oh, he still wants Greenland. He wants Greenland and Canada. And he's willing to do it. The idea that the maggots think he's some kind of Prince of Peace is hysterical and completely delusional. All right, kids. Catch you later.